Exponential Lie, Professor Gary Hanington and elcodaily.com. Contact your lawyers and the FBI. American lawyers are supposed to like money. Show them this presentation. The FBI too. See whose side they are on. Note to censors, we use only government data. If you have a problem with the results, speak to the government. Note to censors, this presentation is being made available to be forwarded to the FBI. If you interfere with it, you are obstructing justice. There is only one definition of exponential that is accurate and formal. It is the function of the form f of x equals b to the x, or in Excel notation, power b, x. On linear scale, it produces a line like this, familiar no doubt from articles about the exponential growth of the virus. On a log scale, it produces a line like this, not so familiar perhaps, as it doesn't look so scary, but it's scary enough. There's only one problem. Here's Hubei, worst hit province in China. Does that bear any resemblance to the exponential curves? Here it is in log scales. Exponential growth is linear on a log scale. Does anything other than Hubei being over look linear in either total cases or daily cases? Claimed cases per day in the exponential model, the straight lines. Actual cases per day in Hubei, falling away. Where the media claimed the virus was going, straight up. Where the virus was actually going, sideways. You've been lied to from the very beginning. China lied. China gave us the death rates per age, still good. China gave us their regional breakdown highlighting Hubei, which has proven to be a key reference curve. China has been a model citizen by comparison to our own governments and media. But hey, you don't want to trust China? Here's the other nations available to Ferguson and Johnson prior to the first 530,000 deaths estimate. I've included two exponential curves, the straight lines, for comparison. Korea curling over twice, Italy up and then over, Iran still straightish, Hubei over, done and flat. By March 16th, the day the Imperial College report was quoted with 510,000 UK deaths, 81% infected, to scare you, there was a whole gaggle of countries to choose from, 11 non-China countries. Korea and France, notice the bow compared to the straight exponential line. Korea, Republic of, is already over, curled over and flat. Korea and France, France is bowed, curling over, versus the exponential straight line. Even if China lied, it didn't, it gave us critically important data, then South Korea had already demonstrated a perfect replica at far below Hubei levels. Notice this chart data was available on the 16th March, even as ICCRT and Ferguson chose to publish. Where they told you it was headed, where the virus was headed. Both of them finished. Iran, Germany, Iran bowed and flattening, while the exponential just keeps climbing. Germany bowed but going straight for a bit. Each bow versus the straight line exponential shows the virus is not following an exponential path. The moment you see curl over, you know that the flattening of the curve to end of contagion is inevitable. This starts high, then curls over, slows down as a rate of growth, is what we refer to as curl over. As curl over continues is exactly as we'd expect of a humped curve, like a normal distribution, it goes entirely flat. The contagion is over. Flattening the curve has been co-opted by exponentialists and government propaganda. It is a natural phenomenon of the virus anyway. The government has basically claimed they make the sun rise, and people believe them. Italy, Netherlands, both bowed, curling over, just like the lying Chinese. The lying Chinese are the only people that haven't gone on national television or into your media to lie to your faces that we face an exponential growth in cases. Norway, Spain both bowed, though Spain is straightening up a bit, but still crossing through exponential, and this is a week before lockdown in the UK. Notice these characteristic bows are in place from the very beginning, from 10 to 100 cases. No government was implementing strict controls, no lockdown at 100 cases. Switzerland bowed. Here we illustrate the concept of a channel. Although data may vary chaotically, sometimes it will still follow a channel, which we'll see in growth decay analysis. Here, of course, the channel is illusory. Once the virus curls over more, it will leave the channel forever as it flattens and the contagion burns out. The UK, home of dodgy data, and it's the only country apparently exponential at this point. Fair enough, we'll wait. Except for the US, of course, that other country whose financial capital has been hit 240 times worse than the non-US EU-UK world. That's by March 16th, still a week from lockdown, and every country except the UK and USA is showing the bowed hallmark of a non-exponential curve. And two countries, Hubei, China, and Korea Republic of, are done, over, and they sure as hell weren't exponential. Anyone publishing an exponential meme or article after March 16th was either ignorant or fraudulent. Lawyers take note, you're welcome. By March 23rd we had 20 players from memory, count them in the charts. Austria bowed and crossing the exponential, Australia bowing at the top. Belgium deeply bowed, though it will manage to generate numbers second only to New York before it's done. New York, London, EU, Western power centres, and look how they've done. The only political virus in the world, attacking Western power centres hundreds of times more than the rest of the world. Japan, a very low rate of growth, and bowed nevertheless. Canada reluctantly joining the US-UK party, but then curling over at the top. Denmark radically bowed. Germany still floating with exponential, but showing a whole series of bows. Italy massively bowed and curling over, heading towards completion, though it will rise above Hubei before it's flat. Remember, this is what the government knew to be true. March 23rd, even as they sent you into lockdown. It was never exponential, it was never 530,000 deaths. China lied. Malaysia isn't going to go anywhere near Hubei in cases or deaths, and it's showing that right here. Two clear bows. This virus does not do exponential. Sweden massively curled over. Portugal showing again two distinct bows. The straight line is where the media says they're going, but while the straight line will take you straight to 53 million infected, 530,000 deaths, the real world that is already apparent ain't going anywhere close. And they had this data. How many apologists will be looking at this, trying to excuse their parent government? The biggest case of Stockholm Syndrome in history. France, Iran, both clearly bowed, Iran massively so. Korea Republic of course, over and over and over, and nowhere near Hubei levels. Did Korea lie? Netherlands, Spain, clearly bowed, Netherlands massively so. Norway, Switzerland, Norway on its way out, crisis over, even before we went into lockdown, following Hubei and South Korea. Exponential? Never exponential. And the politicians had this, so either they were incompetent and not fit to govern you, or they lied to you for reasons that you can surmise for yourself. Hint, they did tell you to wait for the vaccine. Even we in the UK are timidly bowing just a little, but then we've yet to discover the extent to which the figures will depart from a virus once we reach peak. And the US likewise, curling over because that's what viruses do. But no, we can't have that. Someone's fighting back in the land hit 15 times harder than the rest of the world, 240 times harder in New York City. By March 23rd, even the China lied meme doesn't save them, with all those countries showing curl-over, bowed curves showing the virus isn't exponential in growth and never was. And Korea over, China lied. It's proven to be a godsend as a benchmark that other Western countries exceed and the rest of the world by and large does far better than. Why would the same virus hit Western nations close to New York, UK and EU, but not, for example, Greece and Poland, not friends of the EU, so hard? It's a virus, not a political animal playing political games. Politicians, though, they are political animals, and they do play games. And today, of course, we can see charts from our previous chart update, new one coming shortly, but doing this first. Italy, first and for a long time worst hit country in the world until Spain overtook it. And no, it was never the USA. Population, guys, just 'cause you're big doesn't mean you're worst hit. I've added some exponential curves, straight lines on log. Pick one. None of them fit. You can't fit a straight line to a curve, or vice versa. But those straight lines are the 530,000 deaths you were told to be scared of. You were lied to from the very beginning, and they're still lying to you. And if anyone tells you that, you argue and dismiss and refuse to accept the possibility. If you'd argued and dismissed and refused to accept the possibility at the very beginning, you'd never have been put in lockdown, or as of today had it extended in fear of the second wave UK. And you believe that, like Bill Gates, Justin Trudeau and the UK government said, you ain't coming out till the vaccine. Why won't you just accept that and then decide that's not how your society is going to be run? Even the UK, it curled over, but that's because of lockdown. No, it was curling over before lockdown. We just need a little bit of patience and we'd have been out like the rest. Lockdown initiated on the 23rd of March, earliest effect 28th of March due into incubation, projected cases no lockdown, fixed at lockdown, defined by the curve, zero change in cases until it actually exceeds the no lockdown cases. But hey, maybe I made a bad projection. No doubt you're figuring out the excuse why you should believe the government and disregard this, right? Fair enough. What did the government say? Lockdown is working. The growth in new cases is reducing. Here's what they didn't tell you. The growth in new cases is always reducing from day one. It's a factor of the normal distribution, not an exponential curve, that the virus propagation most closely resembles. Hubei, normal in both cases and deaths, and here we even force the distribution to use the actual observed peak, mean date, and population cases and deaths, and peak level. If the curves didn't fit, they'd have blown out the sides or been too narrow. Instead, they're a perfect fit for what actually happened. It's normal, not exponential. South Korea, normal, and its cousin log normal is even a fractionally better fit. The log normal fit is so perfect, it's a work of art. South Korea lied? Maybe you should trust your own government, even Imperial College. Imperial College, their infamous ICCRT Report 9, with its fictitious numbers and exponential growth. Only here's their own chart, normal, not exponential. Save the NHS, normal, not exponential. Jesus, they lied to you and didn't even bother to use diagrams consistent with their lies, and you still didn't notice. Who is the real villain here? They gave you every opportunity to catch them, and you never bothered to look, or you looked but did not see. Normal, not exponential. Never 530,000 deaths, and here's the thing, a quirk about normal distributions. It was obvious that the growth in new cases declines almost linearly, but it turns out that it's not a coincidence. It's not linear, but guess what? Exponential decline. How about that? every day's new cases increases by a slightly smaller amount, typically around 99% of the previous day's growth rate. So yeah, to the naive, stupid or mendacious, sure, let's call that exponential. They just chose not to point out that it was a convenient approximation for a few days, and the media translated it into the month until you were all infected or dead. It was an approximation that was never truly exponential. Just looked like it for a few days, just enough for them to lie and keep lying even to this day. Lancet, by the way, official doctor's research paper, normal, not exponential. Amazingly, through ignorance or laziness, even epidemiologists may not even know they're abusing the term, leaving it to be massively misrepresented to the public. Here's Wikipedia, normally pretty good, but saying that infecting more than one person means the number of people will grow exponentially. Yet literally in the next section on the same page, they show the basic SIR model that I effectively created in my first March 24th presentation to show a rationale for a normal, not exponential distribution. None of those curves are exponential, neither the humped normal-like curve, the S-curve climbing and curling over to the right, or the reverse descending curve. None of them, yet Wiki calls it exponential. Misguided, mistaken, human error, the poor babies. It must be so tough for professors in statistical epidemiology to tell the difference between exponential and what really happened. Unless, of course, they have an agenda and choose to represent the exponential meme even when the evidence contradicts it. That becomes fraud, intent to deceive, and the damages done to this nation, UK and USA and Canada and worldwide, are massive. So let's see, would any reputable scientist truly wish to deceive? Here's Professor Hannington's Speaking of Science, the power of positive exponential. I'd get your lawyers to watch this. Now, you'd probably not even notice the disclaimer there, excluding China, South Korea, Italy, Iran, and this was published March 14th, basically coincident with the Imperial College March 16th report. So this professor was even anticipating the document that sold the crisis to the UK and US government. And he's what? American? And who do we know in the US that's selling this exponential meme even today? But hey, no matter, that's something that Hannington can answer when he's interviewed. I haven't even read the article, just seen this chart, and it triggered alarms. So we're experiencing this together. And right now, what do you remember from earlier? Anything about China, Hubei, South Korea, Italy and Iran ring a bell? March 14th. Let's look at those March 16th charts for those countries again. March 16th, and there's March 14th on the bottom. China Hubei is over, long dead, and put exponential to bed as soon as it started curling over in late January, early February. March 16th, March 14th at the bottom. Korea over, all but flat, just putting the finishing touches to an entire contagion, with cases at barely 10% of China Hubei's, and China would be a fraction of Hubei because China was Hubei. 84% of cases, 96% of fatalities. Gee, how strange of Professor Hannington to exclude those countries, but at least he was honest and let us know, just in case anyone challenged his article, of course. He never lied, but we'll see, and I haven't read it yet, just saw the chart. What were the other two? Iran and Italy. Here's Italy, massively bowed, showing the characteristic curlover of our normal or humped distribution virus propagation. And here's Iran, again showing massively bowed, the characteristic curlover consistent with Hubei, China, the key indicator we've been showing to viewers that the crisis is over. The contagion will continue, but not exponentially. So look at that. The good professor explicitly excluded exactly the 4 countries that showed this was never exponential. None of those straight exponential on log scale lines representing reality. Gosh, well, I'm sure he had a reason. Let's see what he wanted to show, so let's take a look at the chart he did include in his article. Now, I can't legally see this chart, so don't tell anyone I saw it, because elcodaily.com respects EU GDPR and says that as a European I'm not allowed to see this. Thank heavens that EU are protecting us with GDPR. I can't see road safety statistics to update my analysis that shows that the UK government is massively lying about speeding either, again thanks to GDPR. As an individual, I'm not GDPR compliant, but hey, quick nostalgia trip. There's only one perfect cause or determinant of traffic accidents and casualties: traffic density. More cars, more pedestrians, more injuries. Go figure. How easy is it to speed in rush hour? So speeding is way down with casualties at max. As traffic declines, accidents fall away, 98% correlation from memory, and hey, less traffic can sensibly and safely increase cruising speeds, except now you're speeding, an easy no accident catch for the police, and government are taking action on road safety. Speeding, a policy of deception, on Amazon, and amazingly a viewer had actually read it as his first Kindle book, in fact purchasing a Kindle just to read it. How about that? And here I am again using their own data to disprove their fraudulent claims. Plus ça change. Meantime, the good professor has this chart, and because he goes from 0 to 1,000, again an interesting choice, obfuscate the fact that these are linear perhaps. We can't say if that's linear or log scales. But hey, here's one we prepared earlier, log scales for France. Gee, bode curling over to the right. Let's put them side by side. So here they are, the red lines showing their curves. Now I'm sure the good professor intended no deception. He's left out 4 curled over, 2 finished countries, and used a scale that shows France escalating to the moon when log scale would have shown it non-exponential and dying. But hey, I haven't read the article yet, so we're going to share this together. But he did call the article The Power of the Positive Exponential. Well, I've now read the article and I'm amazed. I'll have to upload the PDF for EU viewers, but in theory it's still up there for non-EU viewers. I'll post the link in the description, and I'd suggest you take a copy and a couple of pictures. Professor Hannington just made himself an easy target for any lawyer wanting to pursue a claim of damages based on misrepresentation with a view to negligence, the commission of fraud, or colluding in a criminal activity, because taking down the economy and false imprisonment on false pretenses is definitely a criminal activity. Well, I've now read the article and I'm amazed. I'll have to upload the PDF for EU viewers, but in theory it's still up there for non-EU viewers. I'll post the link in the description, and I'd suggest you take a copy and a couple of pictures. Professor Hannington just made himself an easy target for any lawyer wanting to pursue a claim of damages based on misrepresentation with a view to negligence, the commission of fraud, or colluding in a criminal activity, because taking down the economy and false imprisonment on false pretenses is definitely a criminal activity. Here's the link to his article, and then we'll go through it. As I say, I'm astounded, but as ever it's one of those masterful propaganda pieces where they can proclaim innocence, only they messed up. Bear in mind that this is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but what the heck, it's at the bottom of the article. Gary Hanington is Professor Emeritus of Physical Science at Great Basin College and Chief Scientist at AHV. Professor Emeritus, that sounds serious, like someone... Professor Emeritus, that sounds serious, like someone that seriously cannot make casual errors, and is more than capable of understanding how selective choice of data can change a story dramatically. She mouthed off, so I hit her and she ended up in hospital. She mouthed off at the TV and it was annoying her so much I hit her TV remote off button and she ended up thanking me before finally we went out to go visit her mom in hospital. Let me post the full text here, fully attributed, all rights to elcodaily.com, who probably will wish they didn't have those rights if we can get any lawyers targeted at them. But hell, this is the US, right? Should be easy. Now, do not be tempted to reach out to the good professor and get me into trouble. Leave that to the carpet-bagging, ambulance-chasing lawyers who might find an interesting connection with a centibillionaire philanthropist, because here's an interesting thing. Professor Ferguson was the earliest lying scumbag professor, creating a private sector initiative, vaccine marketing piece, masquerading as Imperial College COVID-19 Response Team Report 9, and in it he declared the entire crisis strategy. A. Massively dangerous threat, 510,000 UK deaths, 2.2 million American deaths. So kind of him to remember Americans are at risk too. Only massive intervention can reduce this terrible threat. Only vaccine can be effective to handle it in the future. Not the exact words maybe, you get the idea, and I doubt anyone except a troll could take exception to that summary. On March 23rd, we are duly locked down. The threat of 530,000 deaths miraculously disappears, downgraded to 5,700. And no, I haven't forgotten, we still need to finish the lockdown failure. And we're safely in our homes to hear D, the final part of the message. 3 people, using essentially identical wording, in 3 different countries, all with the same message: you're not getting out until the vaccine. Phrased as, no normal until the vaccine. An American philanthropist, Bill Gates, Fox News, April 5th. Justin Trudeau, UK government official, we didn't even merit a figurehead. Now, I already did a video taking down Herr Gates and his interview, with 26 lies or misrepresentations in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which has to be a world record. And Imperial College are more than happy to advertise their gratitude at the Gates Foundation funding, so the Ferguson-Gates connection is old news. But until I stumbled on this article, I had no idea that an American Professor Emeritus was promoting a false exponential meme even before the ICCRT March 16th report. Bear in mind, the March 3rd press conference used 80% infected, 1% deaths, translated as 53 million infected, 530,000 deaths, so the false memes were official long before March 14th or 16th. Might be worth seeing how many others like this we can find. And even till I read it finally, I had no idea we were dealing with a Professor Emeritus, or that the piece would be so marvellously revealing. It's a masterpiece of caution, but sadly and inevitably the Professor cannot hide his fraud, because he was commissioned to commit fraud, I have no doubt, and went to great lengths to avoid committing too much of a fraud, but there's still more than enough to whet the appetite of lawyers or the FBI. If, of course, you can find an honest US official. At this point, with the full might of the state arrayed against us in the US, UK and Canada, the more likely reaction is that this video will be deleted, the Peerless Reads channel shut down, my Facebook page blocked. So yet again we exist by fortune, taking each day as it comes. Download the PDF and the video from AWS. Keep the story alive, regardless. Again and again, we use their data to show their lies. This is just another one, but a sweet foretaste of what we're assembling against Professor Ferguson. So let's look at that Oh So Professor Emeritus article. A reminder where we were. Professor Emeritus Gary Hanington had written an article for elcodaily.com. He's titled it Professor Hannington Speaking of Science, the Power of the Positive Exponential, and it has a publication date in the article of March the 14th. He's published a chart, and he's duly noted that he's excluded China, South Korea, Italy and Iran. The chart uses linear scales, but hey, let's double check that. Here's our chart using our data every 3 days from our chart updates. Looks about right, let's put them next to each other. Squishing his, yep, looks similar, but we've got Spain at the top, but maybe he finished his with earlier data, March 13th maybe, not a biggie. His Japan is up by Spain, and the US. Our Japan is nowhere near Spain, top, or USA middle. Maybe he did his population normalized. He doesn't say so, but hey, it's what we do. We're only doing this raw because his looks raw. So what would that look like? Now we've got Italy way up at the top and Switzerland next above Spain, above France, with Germany way down, so no. And yeah, how come a Professor Emeritus didn't normalize for populations? But hey. So no, there are anomalies, but it looks like that's supposed to be raw data as recorded. And of course he wants to emphasize exponential is the subject of his article, so no log scales for him. It's interesting, to me the exponential on linear scale is so artificially distorted, and it loses the one key element that log scales give you, that exponential translates to a straight line. It's precisely the key thing that has given me and viewers our sense of what's really happening, whereas the rest of the world has had these "oh my god, it's going to the moon" charts. But hey, no worries. Now about that scale, 0 to 1,000 with no intermediate values. What is it with our values? They're way higher than 1,000, up at 3,500 to 4,000. And I'm pretty sure our data is good. So we've got a scale with no intermediate values, a bad value at 1,000, curves are out of order or misnamed, and key curves missing. Does that sound like the work of a Professor Emeritus? Not to mention no normalization for population, and using linear scales which anyone with a sensible amount of maths would know to be misrepresentative for exponential charts. Only an idiot would use linear charts for stock prices, for example. For long-term trends at least. Intraday, fine, but let me illustrate. Here's the price of Bitcoin on a linear chart. Here it is on a log chart. It looks a lot more sensible. Because exponential is a straight line on a log chart, I could draw these lines, the climbing horizontal channel, and recognize when it was breaking out of the top of the channel. Because of log scales and that channel, I rode Bitcoin all the way to the top, called the top, and paid my bills for a year. And you want to tell me a Professor Emeritus uses linear scales for exponential curves? Only if he's an idiot, or he's talking to people, let's use a polite term, who are inexperienced and easily impressed. But just in case, do you think that maybe somebody decided to obfuscate that this was a linear scale? Some people might not be totally naive. Maybe it was just a bit of extra care. Except that number is massively wrong, so not so careful after all. But no matter, because the bad thing that good Professor Emeritus Gary Hanington did was all at the start, excluding China, South Korea, Italy and Iran. Now why would he do that? What's the message of this chart? Without interviewing everyone who's viewed it, I'd say, oh my god, look at that climb. And this is the virus we're talking about. So it's more like, oh my god, look at that killer virus climb. It's going to get us all. You want to disagree? Okay. And let's just say that might have been the narrative. Now what? Oops, what happened? Well, firstly, our scary lines got crushed. They're right down at the bottom, kind of insignificant. Not perhaps the message the good professor wanted. Second, what's with that flat line? Isn't this supposed to infect everybody? Bill Gates Second, what's with that flat line? Isn't this supposed to infect everybody? Bill Gates, April the 5th. That curve would never bend until you had the majority of the people infected. China, 1.4 billion people, infected 81,000. That's like 0.0058%. That is seriously going to mess with somebody's narrative if everybody turns out to be 0.0058%. And that's where it stops, flatlined, over. So yeah, I might want to avoid that awkward no, it's not exponential, and B, it's over at 0.0058% infected problem. But hey, I'm sure Professor Hannington was more interested in the hypothetical exponential. The problem is, what do you think viewers were looking for? His didactic prose and wait till you see it, or information on the virus that was coming to get them? Yeah, I'd go with the virus, the exponential virus. So, smart man, he bins China, but we don't know why, and we don't do theory. The FBI can ask him that. What does that? So, smart man, he bins China, but we don't know why, and we don't do theory. The FBI can ask him that. What does that look like? The chart, not the FBI, if we let him bin China only. That's much better. We're back to scary exponential. But wait a minute, what's with that purple guy? South Korea, the damn thing's leveling off. Jesus, can somebody get this stupid line off my chart? Finally, pure drama screaming to heaven, except everyone else is kind of wimpy compared to those top two. Who are these guys that are getting whammed by the virus? Italy and Iran. Jesus, we're trying to scare the bejesus out of God-fearing Americans, and you're telling me that people are getting hit are Italians and Iranians that were getting off easy? Get them off there. And so, the approved chart, get rid of two countries which show it isn't exponential at all, and that the final cases will likely be minuscule, and make sure that the true Western countries are centre stage. And that's how you create a scary chart that shows the virus coming to get you. But I'm sure Professor Hannington didn't intend to mislead, so let's see what he had to say. This week, a lot of politicians and newscasters are saying the Chinese coronavirus COVID-19 is increasing exponentially in the world. Whoa, brilliant! Mama didn't raise no fool. He is not going to say COVID-19 is increasing exponentially. No, sir. A lot of politicians and newscasters are saying, now, if they were pointing out the sun rises in the east, would he go to the trouble of saying, a lot of politicians and newscasters are saying the sun rises in the east? Of course not. The sun rises in the east. No biggie. That he takes the trouble to distance himself from it is an indicator. Simple conjecture. He doesn't want to be caught saying something he personally doesn't believe, and he's smart enough to know it ain't exponentially. Unfortunately for him, just that evasion is a massive clue. We don't have to be right or prove it. That's the FBI's job to question him. Our job is to spot that he should be questioned. He created a fraudulent piece promoting exponential virus growth, but he's tried to present the piece as innocuous by not himself stating that explicitly. Tough. The power of positive exponential plus a chart of COVID-19 growth looking exponential implies the message COVID-19 growth is exponential. Irony. Had he included the omitted curves, then people would have had a chance to wonder at why some were not apparently exponential. By removing them, he reduced the chance for anyone to understand that the curves were not exponential. They were omitted by choice. A conscious decision had to be made. It was premeditated. How he explains it to the FBI is up to him, but that his behavior is suspicious is obvious. Omitting or falsifying evidence is a criminal offense in a criminal trial. He just hasn't yet been confronted with a criminal trial. But if it's bad in a criminal trial, it seems reasonable to suggest it's bad, especially if it misrepresents the fact, leading to people consenting to actions they would not otherwise consent to. Just last week, there were 88 cases within the United States, and now as of today, March 12th, 1350. And that, believe it or not, is the last we hear about COVID-19. Seriously, the world's in crisis. He's just shown a chart with the COVID-19 growing exponentially and omitting two critical curves where it's over, and he's done. That's it. Oh, sorry. The fact it seems to be doubling every few days can be modelled using mathematics. Again with the evasion, not is doubling. If he stated that, he'd be able to be contradicted, stating a fact that he must clearly know as a mathematician or Professor Emeritus not to be true. Again, it is evasion that betrays his guilt or complicity in misrepresenting the virus as an exponential growth risk. He's hoping that if called on it, he can point out he never said it was doubling every few days. It's the kind of schoolboy evasion that sounds so lame as an adult. I never said you were X. I just said... Busted. Again, we don't have to prove what he knew. That's the FBI's job. We just need Americans to get in touch with lawyers to sue him for the damage done to the USA based on his and other meme promoters, to find out just why such a smart man would choose to misrepresent basic facts that he clearly did not want to misrepresent or did not want to be caught misrepresenting. This is handy because it tells us what the numbers will grow to as the days go on, allowing hospitals and care facilities to plan what they will need to have to treat people in the coming days. Blah blah blah. Except, wait a minute. Why is that familiar? March 16th, Imperial College COVID-19 Response Team Report 9, Impact of Non-Pharmaceutical Interventions to Reduce COVID-19 Mortality and Healthcare Demand. 2 days before a British scientist, I use the term loosely, reveals his private marketing initiative for mandatory vaccines based on the virus that's going to grow exponentially until you had the majority of the people infected and then a massive number seeking hospital care and lots of deaths. Notice how the Gates interview segues so nicely. The good professor publishes an article about a virus that seems to grow exponentially, which is good to know because it will allow hospitals and care facilities to plan. Is it just me, or does that sound a lot like a common narrative? Which is fine. We will all, I hope, describe the sun rising in the east, that it's cold in the Arctic, that the Atlantic Ocean is big and wet. But when it's not self-evident truths that are being coincidentally released across broadly separated continents, yet in a similar time frame, but lies, and these are lies, I hope by now that you've recognized that, then that triggers alarms. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. A Professor Emeritus takes the trouble to author a piece that basically is drivel, wait till we get to it, but has two key things, the only two things that the piece required, I suggest. A title mentioning exponential, and a chart showing the COVID-19 growing exponentially. Get the meme out there, and how much did we see of that? And if you search on virus exponential growth or similar, there's a lot out there. As I've always said, the more they do, the more they incriminate themselves. And here's a perfect example. They lied because they wanted us scared. Be scared, stay in your homes, wait for the vaccine. It's not rocket science, and it's their stated agenda, not my theory. But that it's based on lies is a massive advantage we have, because the lies are like fluorescent paint on banknotes. They are markers to show who should be questioned. An eminent Professor Emeritus tells absurd porkies that his own writing and conscience won't allow him to state bluntly. You want to find out who suggested he write that piece and why he acceded to the request. So yeah, that really is the end of the COVID stuff. Because a great deal of physics can be explained by using the exponential function, it is good to understand how it operates. You don't need much training in mathematics to use the e to the x button on your scientific calculator or iPhone. Blah blah blah. It is a friendly function. Students first see the exponential function when taking calculus because it easily provides solutions to loads of differential equations that govern our world. For example, when you pour out a cup of tea, it cools off to temperatures according to a negative exponential with respect to time. Like, you're shitting me. Temperature equals T initial E minus KT, where K is some parameter that depends on the size of the shape of the cup and the coefficient T initial is starting temperature at time zero. Because the E function raised to a negative value is inherently less than the unity of the temperature of the T will fall as time goes on. The negative E functions are found everywhere in the world, and that includes such diverse areas as chemical reactions. We're in the middle of a global crisis threatening 510,000 UK deaths, ICCRT, and 2.2 American deaths, and this fool is going on about the E function. You cannot make a bell curve without it. It is interesting to ask why the expression identifies the ability of it. Many physicals say, and the answer is simply the slope of the curve is equal to the exact value of the curve at the point. The strange behaviour only occurs when E was described by Leonard Euler, the found in the 18th century. No, seriously, you do need to hear this. Notice that the above temperature equation has a negative exponential. In fact, it's all this negative exponential. The positive exponential is found because it blows up too quickly. Just try putting E into the tooth around and it cannot even handle it. Consequently, the positive form is only used in model explain. For example, the explosion comes to shoot up bullets shown around when the temperature Russia and block that fails, coming on the reactor jump for a low power. It's feasible. There's positive. They blow the reactor function at the time. The nuclear release 40 million joules in the blink of an eye. Yeah, wow, now I'm really scared. Like, virus, COVID-19, any time now would be good. But I don't want you to think all the best. Oh, heaven forbid. There are a few positive explanations that can be modeled in the table. In mankind, one of them is the approximation of a continuous amount of interest. A equals B. P equals where you put the money in the P, you have the exponential of time. In this equation, if your equation, the rate would be whether about 5, you would be 3 times written, you have both. Is this guy serious? Very, because he knows that he cannot possibly write a full article on the exponential growth of the virus because it's A, not exponential, and B, he'd be leaving himself wide open for lying through his teeth in support of the biggest crisis to hit the domestic United States in its history, short of actual civil war. But here's the bad news, Gary Hanington. You did lie through your teeth in constructing your own dodgy dossier because it doesn't require semantic nitpicking, it only requires intent to deceive, and it will be for a jury to decide on that. I won't bother to read this out, but yeah, friction of rope wrapped around a post. Seriously, this guy did not want to be caught saying anything incriminating about the virus, and that is incriminating in its own way. Maybe not quite the dog did not bark, but pretty close. Now, time to round it off, and he has to pretend it's been about the virus. So the powerful positive exponential can be both good and bad. Concerning the present virus outbreak in our country, it looks quite bad if it continues unabated, and according to data published in an article by Thomas Pueyo of Medium, the number of cases double every 3 days. The time frame for 100,000 cases in the US is about March 31st and 1 million cases April the 10th. Plan accordingly. Evasion looks, he never says it is or will be bad. Evasion if it continues unabated, and according to someone else, not him, the number of cases double every 3 days. And can you believe it? His considered response after telling us about rope twisting and wasting an entire article on nonsense is to summarize sensible measures, critical measures, society-destroying measures as plan accordingly. In a way, it's the most telling of all. It's, don't look at me, I just wrote the article I was told to write. Gary Hanington is Professor Emeritus of Physical Science at Great Basin College and Chief Scientist at AHV, for a little while longer at least. He can be reached at whatever. So there's no excuse for the FBI not to be able to find him. Notice to FBI, Professor Emeritus Gary Hanington misrepresented key facts about COVID-19 in an article designed to mislead and generate fear among other persons similarly tasked, such as Professor Ferguson of Imperial College London, to encourage compliance with measures which would curtail the rights of citizens and do massive damage to the American economy. I, Andrew Mather of Henham's Caxton Place, Court Lane, Hadlow, TN11 0JU, United Kingdom, will stand and testify to that effect in any duly convened court of law in the United States, United Nations, or other legitimate court having jurisdiction. And yeah, most of our viewers have seen this, but I hate you to go without seeing that no, lockdown hasn't saved a single case or life. Notice the growth rate decline isn't altered in the slightest by lockdown. Well, that was unexpected. I guess you'd better download any PDFs you want to keep. One or other of us is going down, and with philanthropist friends in high places, I doubt it's going to be Gary Hanington. Note to censors, we use only government data. If you have a problem with the results, speak to the government. I'm still Andrew Mather, a 60-year-old Brit, mathematician, financier, technologist, husband, piker, pilot, healer, whatever. Feel free to get in touch, Andrew at peerlessreese.com or andrew@amather.com. Either should get to me.